Good evening, guys. This is episode 5, counting 5 with our first season of Musicians Forum podcast. And tonight I've got the guy who is rocking Eastern Kentucky out every Sunday night with his radio show. And actually, he's got several shows going on throughout the week. He's brought countless of rock and roll acts to Eastern Kentucky, exposing our communities to some of the legends of rock and roll. And we're honored to have Greg Napier here tonight from Hazard. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, my friend. It's good to be on here. So this is my really first one of these, and like I said, it took me a few minutes to get acclimated in here. So I'm glad to be here with you. Awesome. You're a good man.
Well, we were just talking before we got on the air here. Man, we're taking a hit in January. The Rock family, yeah. We've lost within, I guess, 8 or 9 days. We lost Jeff Beck, and today we lost a great in rock and roll history with David Crosby and the Van from Screaming Trees. Didn't see that one coming. And so
I know he's 55, and what we lost Larnigan just over a year and a half ago, and I just played Nearly Lost You just a couple days ago, and just that band to me still is really underappreciated out of all those Seattle bands. Larnigan, I think, as a poet, kind of grew over the years. One of the last interviews Anthony Bourdain did was with Mark Larnigan, and I'm a big fan of the Afghan Wigs and Greg Dooley. They do some work with him, but that kid's, he's still a kid, I guess, in ways. I mean, but 55 is still young, but he was a great bass player. And, that rhythm section with him and Barrett Martin were incredible, man, and so we've had involvement too with Walking Papers over the years. Mm-hmm. Actually played, I think, in 18 here for us. So, so Barrett was part of that early inception. He and Duff McKagan actually interviewed those guys when that first Walking Papers album came out. So I'm a big fan of that band, and that started the week off. And then today, you're shaking your head with David Crosby, who's widely considered to me one of the great voices in music history.
Absolutely. And just recently, well, within the last year, I know kind of COVID, I got caught up in a lot of things I missed out on, but Echoes in the Canyon, great documentary. Jacob Dylan, I guess, produced that, but interviewing those guys. And I mean, you're talking about, you go into an album store right now and you go in a classic rock section, the guys' albums that are sitting in there that came from the Canyon. It's an amazing amount of music that came out of that era, and
it's unbelievable. And you think about Crosby and Joni Mitchell, and then eventually here comes Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt, but it just it's what happened up there over the years in that canyon, how it shaped so much, and it even influenced the Beatles. You think about She Said when Peter Fonda and Lennon sat down in the canyon one night doing some extracurricular activities, and he gave them that line in the canyon there. And one of my mentors and friends, Jim Ladd, he actually lived in Laurel Canyon there for years. He's up in Northern California now, and Jim was on KMET, KLOS. He's an LA legend. He's on Sirius XM right now.
He had a birthday today, didn't
he? Yeah. Two days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. So, but he is, some of the cool things he's told me about that is pretty unique. And, I mean, the canyon, like you say, I mean, it shaped a generation in ways here in this country.
Absolutely. And I looked, I was really shocked because, Jeff Beck, I'm a guitarist. And, when you talk about Jeff Beck, you're talking about guitar royalty. And right there with Clapton and Page, and they're just household names. But he was one of those eclectic guys that just did not take the instrument. He took the instrument to something else different, something that you really couldn't conceive. And but on top of that, I thought, I'm just going to go, because he's one of those guys that if I was going to go buy an album, I necessarily wouldn't buy his album just because it's
Mm-hmm.
just so hard for me to really kind of absorb it. But I can appreciate it, and I definitely
Yeah.
would not turn the channel when he comes on. But I just wanted to read through his history, and it is
Mm.
amazing. I mean, he was almost in the Rolling Stones, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Page kind of pushed him in the Yardbirds, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
everybody just wanted Beck on their team,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me sick at how easy and effortless he had that little thumb finger roll pick thing
Yeah.
that he do, and it made it sound, you know,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well,
amazing.
he was incredible. You talk about that Yardbirds University, you graduate out of there, and then you can conquer the world. Of course, to me, Greg, if there wasn't the Jeff Beck group and Beck Ola, I don't think you would have got the prowess of Led Zeppelin 1. I think that really, it kind of ignited those guys to make that album. I don't think a lot of people will recognize that as, but I played, the Jeff Beck Truth album Sunday night in its entirety on my show vinyl. And because that's what I want people to hear, because I have the luxury of playing vinyl here at this radio station that I'm a part of, and I'm so lucky to be a part of. But I just think he was a guy that was so different and so unique, that he really didn't have to have a front man with him after that, era. And he went on and created a lot of cool stuff. And even in the 70s, they brought in some singers here and there, but he was a guy that just sold his soul through his, his strings, if you will. And I mean, those guys, what they really planted, you got caught up. I don't think the rest of the world, they never will. I mean, Hendrix touched on some things and some other folks, but those three, guys out of that stable of Yardbirds, and oh goodness gracious, it's ridiculous, the abundance of talents. But Beck to me was the greatest player ever, in my opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but I think if you look at it, you're a player, the way his style, I mean, it just, that's, nobody played like that before or since.
And he stayed relevant, I mean, how long was his
Mm-hmm.
career? I mean, he was still playing. I mean, he would
Well, he just played three months
October.
ago with Johnny Depp. We've been playing this Miss Hattie Lamar, which is a great song.
Mm-hmm.
They covered Lennon's Isolation, but even Imelda May, well, she worked with him. He stayed relevant up till he got, just to hear till he got sick here, just and that's the beauty about a 60-year, almost 60-year career. He started as a session player, which he actually, I'm sure he started before that, but 60 years he was in the game and never went away. So there's not many people can say that.
Yeah.
So,
well, we definitely missed their space,
yeah.
I think even David just, what was it, this past summer, he just released an album.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been produced right up to the end,
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the beauty about musicians. That as an artist, that there's no really retirement set in stone age that you want to get there. I mean, you're going to tell a painter he can't paint, or a writer she can't write. I mean, if your musician plays to the day you go, you can't play anymore. That's one of the cool things that I read just the other day about John Fogerty. Thank God he got his, it took him 50 years to get his music back, but he said there's no retirement platform for him. He says, when I can't do it, he said, I just go home. And he said, and then, look back on the career.
Yeah. And there's a theme through our podcast we keep talking about, and I've been kind of talking to some folks in the community, a lot of the players around here in bands that maybe played 10 or 15 years ago, and they talk about, that it's like, man, don't think of that as the past. I mean, let's take some opportunities and see if we can get some guys together. Last night got interview some guys haven't played in about 10 years, and they're talking about getting together and playing and putting an album together. And so I was like, man, look at some of these guys have been making, like you said, 60 years. Don't give up.
Yeah. That's the thing. I have respect for you folks that play and write and stuff like that. That's a unique ability that, just for your mind, as people get older too. I think that's it keeps you so sharp over the years, and even if you've been away from it and you get back in it, I mean, obviously it's a soul stirrer, but it's a release that only you guys know. And I, as an outside looking in, and there's so much respect for musicians. I revel what anybody can do. If it's somebody just sitting on a storefront covering a song, or somebody really putting something out to make a living at it. A musician is a different talent that my goodness, I have a lot of respect for.
Absolutely. And it's ever evolving, and I'm thankful to be a part of that's happening around here. And I don't know. This is what I like to do, so I enjoy
Yeah,
it.
well, I mean, it shows the beauty and the richness of Kentucky, Greg. From across all the way across this state, there's so many great artists in the state of Kentucky, like you, and they're popping up. Seems like daily around here. And Kentucky, man, has got such a cool tradition of musicians over the years, and it continues to grow. And you're over there growing it, and you're bringing folks back out, of their shell and getting them to record again. I love it, man. I think Kentucky, as far as talent wise, there's no better place in America to be than Kentucky right now.
So you mentioned Beck, and I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because, listen, I've been listening to you. So I have to give a plug to one of my friends, Wade Daffron over in Russell Springs.
Yeah.
He messaged me one time and said, you got to check out my brother over in Eastern Kentucky. And this, oh gosh, I don't want to say it was 10, 11 years ago. And turned me on to your radio show, which at that time I was listening through Facebook through it. And so I was like, man, who's this guy? And then you started bringing in all these concerts in and this rock history and everything involved. I was like, okay, this guy knows some stuff. So this is a loaded question, but you mentioned Beck, so that's 1 out of the 5. I'm going to ask you what your top 5 guitarists are.
They've changed over the years, but I'm going to say this into my 50s because, and I've asked myself this many, many times, Greg, who are the 5, and they've really have revolved a lot. But as of today, and I will say this now, after especially been on the radio for nearly 20 years or whatever, to me, it's Jeff Beck's going to be 1. I'm going to say Clapton 2, and Hendrix, Page, and my 5th, and a lot of people will, I hope they will agree with me, is Richie Blackmore. From Deep Purple and Rainbow. Those are my 5, but I could name probably 30 after that. That's right on that cups of 6, put in 6 to 10. I've been lucky to see a lot of those guys in these small rooms. Some of those 6 to 30, like, we've had the Black Crowes guitarists in there, the Jakey Lees, the George Lynch, the Richie Kotzens. I could name a bunch of them that are that sometime when I'm looking, even now, and I look back at all that, I'm like, man, I don't know how we pulled that off, and to be in such a small town. But all those guys that came through, they loved it. But and we're really lucky that we've seen them. But those 5, to me now, if that's my 5 that I will go to the rest of my life. Those 5 I named. But man, there's a bunch right after them too that I love.
I was gonna say, I mean, that's so hard because, and the thing that I like about your radio shows that you play, particularly the one on Sundays, those are the ones I can tune into. Those to me expose me to not only maybe B-side songs that were either overlooked, in the back of those albums, that were, in my opinion, usually end up being a whole lot better than the ones that actually mainstreamed, that got played. And then those bands that really are marching in the footsteps of that sound. And this is going to lead me into my next series of questions, because your format of your show, which I enjoy because I can just let it run, and I'm intrigued by the next song that's being played, is your selections. So is that from personal taste because you've dialed into a certain rock sound that you like, and you listen to something, you go, okay, I like that, so that needs to be on my show? Is that kind of what's your methodology a bit behind playlists on the radio?
Well, each Sunday I come in with an idea, and throughout the week, Greg, I may in my phone write down 60, 70 songs, that I'm hearing in my mind if I'm up late at night or early in the morning. But I will go in and challenge myself I don't have a set playlist. I never have. And I go off of how I'm feeling that day, what I've heard that week, try to stir in some history. But if there's bands that I think that should have been played that hasn't been played, deep cuts that, if people will let me, let me kind of let your mind kind of go like a theater of mind type of play on that at the end of the hour or whatever, when we kind of break down some of those sets, it'll be like, I get why that song was placed there, or this band was put there. And I do a lot of it off of segues and things like that. And I challenge myself, each Sunday to do that, because making a playlist and things like that to me is too safe, and I don't think it's honest. I want to be able. There'll be certain songs I'm like, man, you shouldn't have put it in there, but it is an honest effort. But I'm trying to reel you in and take you through a kind of a journey, just like Jim Ladd has done for 50 plus years. That's what I want to do. It's free form rock and roll, and it's an honest show, because nobody's over my shoulder and saying you have to play this or you can't play that. So I've done that for a long time. Ben Gish at MMT, he and Jim Ladd to me were the catalyst of that. And I just try to kind of go off their approach, and over the years it seemed to work, for me. And I've met a lot of friends like you through this show, and it's a connection. I think when you make a connection through music, it's different than you would at a workplace or at a ball field or something like that. It's the emotions that much more involved. And there'll be some sets I play that will bring a tear to my eye, because it'll bring up a memory or something like that. And that's the way I like my shows, to be able to bring you to maybe some emotions throughout the evening.
Well, I gotta say, you kind of turned me on to a few bands, Bravo Sons being one of them, that are, easily in my top 20. But the thing that's interesting is you've got a great mix of the classic rock, but you've got that modern mix of musicians that you bring in too. Greta Van Fleet, before you even know how to say their name, you were playing their album. So how do you see the industry? Because you've got that good mix, and I personally, when I go to a music store, which there's not very many of them, there's very few choices around.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to see anything other than classic rock and pop in the shelves. So how do you find that, and what do you find the pulse of that going?
Well, you mentioned like Greta Van Fleet and Rival Sons. We'll take those two guys, or two bands. Those bands, to me, their roots are in R&B and soul, a little bit of Americana, but the loud guitars and big vocals. And a lot of the stuff in the 60s, like we spoke of the Jeff Beck group, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Humble Pie, which Steve Marriott's a huge fan of mine. I mean, a huge fan of him, I am. But bands like Captain Beyond, Cactus, bands like Truth and Janny, which was a little kind of a one-hit wonder in Iowa, but there was this just incredible three-piece band that was part Blue Cheer, part Humble Pie, Zeppelin. I try to mix all those bands together, and I hear a little something in every one of them, just in my crazy music mind. And so I try to format that together right off the cups, and then there'll be some new artists like, I don't want to call him new, he's been around a while, but Jack White is so good. You can throw him in a set with Howlin' Wolf that will end with Zeppelin, and then come back with Rival Sons. You can throw those guys in there. So they all kind of cross paths in some ways, just for me. my musicology of it. I just find a cool mixture in all those bands. They all, have something that's relevant in, in all their, history of what they've done. And they all pay homage back to where it really started. And that's where I get that. I kind of, I'm thinking of the history of rock and roll when I'm hearing even these newer bands, and I put them in there in the same sets because I just want to challenge people. It's good to put the new with the old, and sometimes I get it right, and it works.
Well, I've heard you put, Robin Trowler, Bridge of Sighs going right into a SEMO song, and it sounds like, wait a minute, is this the same? Right? No,
yeah,
it's different. Yeah.
When you get those segues right, man, those are the for me as a programmer, those are the greatest things in the world. Like you said, with JD and Robin and those guys, even though JD's a newer artist, but he's very, influenced by Trower and all those guys like there. So, and that's what I want to do. I can, people who are a huge Robin Trower fan, I want to turn them on to JD Simo or Rival Sons, Greta Van Fleet, Dirty Honey, many bands like that. Rose Hill Drive. I can think of a band out of Colorado that played here for us that toured with the Black Crowes. That they're, it's uncanny how they sound like Humble Pie and Zeppelin and I put all that together, and because I want to turn folks onto them that aren't already a fan of the people that's came before them, obviously. So
you've caused me to spend a little money. I got my record player over here. I actually heard Dirty Honey, and a friend of mine, Mellow Matt, over in Bowling Green, he's got a record store over there, and called him up the next day, and I said, all right, send me what Dirty Honey albums you got.
yeah
Got to hear it on vinyl.
They're just a great band, and that's and I'm right now I'm so glad to see that there's, like your friend there's independent record stores that are popping back up. We have one here in town. Whitesburg's had one for a while. Pikeville's got one, but as much as I do, there's nothing like being able to make that call and then going and picking that album up and opening it up, reading the liners, and then put it down on the turntable, and knowing that it's a newer band makes all the the circle come back too, man. Because when I was a kid, that's how it was. I got my hands on 33s, 45s, and it went to 8 tracks and cassettes, but there's nothing like vinyl music. I always tell people that's the way it should be heard first. And I try to play vinyl on air because I want folks to hear that warmth, coming across their FM radio dial. So,
well, to that point, it's a great segue. So tell me about what was the album that started you? Obviously you maybe rode in the car with the parents or grandparents and you heard country music, you maybe heard this or that. But what was that album that just opened it up?
In this room that I'm sitting in, Greg, this house that I live in, my parents, my sister are all gone. But when I was a young kid, like 6 years old, in this room here, we had a turntable over on the left here. It was a Fisher. And my sister came in and she gave me a Sam Cooke album, a Zeppelin album, and Aerosmith. And I can still, it was right there in this corner here where all that happened. And my mom and dad were sitting there in the entryway just smiling. And my sister said, you can find your way through these early, this album collection. And so she always told me, and my mom and dad always told me, to listen to everything, give it a chance, because in the morning time here at this house, in this room, you would hear WSGS and hear all the bluegrass and the gospel and the country. And then at night in this room, then Led Zeppelin 2 would be on, and I've got the headphones on next to this window here. So I was lucky to get on a journey with an open mind and try to just find my own way. And they actually encouraged that big time. If I had a child, which I don't, I would have done the same thing as a kid. I would say, you listen to everything you want, and you find your own journey that way, and your own love of it. And so that's what I did right here in this room. So it's pretty pretty unique that you asked that because it happened here in this room.
That's wild.
So,
No, those are the kind of stories. It's of course, we referenced the movie Almost Famous. That's kind of
yeah,
look under the bed. It'll show you the way.
yeah.
She had all those albums under
I
there.
I agree. I agree with it. And I've got friends right now. I tell them the same thing. I said, you've got a record player at home, and you want your kids to start out. Make sure they hear it on vinyl first. I will always go to that all my life, telling people, if you got a youngster that wants to listen to music, make sure it's done on vinyl first.
Well,
Because I don't know what it is. It got in my mind and has never left.
it really is. I mean, I've had my granddad's one he gave me years ago, and it quit working. And I used to use the radio and the tube radio.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah.
But I recently got those fixed, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to just spend the money, get a new one. And then my daughter started buying albums, and so for Christmas this year, we got her a record player to take to college, and she's starting to buy.
God bless you.
It is so exciting to see.
Yeah.
She'll say, "Look what I bought." She's bought Rumors the other day, but yet the newer band 1975 just released their new vinyl, so she's buying it. So new and old, So all right, good.
That's I mean, God bless you for doing that, and I just I love hearing stories like that, especially from friends with their kids. So I'm glad you're letting her take that path and journey.
Well, so how long? So you mentioned 20 years. How long has it been? I mean, doing DJing
right at 20 for the Freeform show, and I just I came into MMT, which at that time, man, you had just a vast amount of great programmers: Jim Webb, Ben Gish, and Bill Farley, and there's some that's no longer living. Jim's no longer living, but it was fascinating to sit down there, and everybody had their own voice, their own take, and they allowed me to do my own thing. God bless them, and I thank them for it. And that lasted for 15 years or whatever, and then the oldest radio family in the region started this new rock station, and they talked to me about coming down and doing a Monday through Friday show. And then eventually that show from MMT came to ZQQ, and I'm the luckiest man on earth to push play every night I'm in there. I don't take it for granted one bit, because there's nothing like it.
Mm-hmm. I have to say that is one unique way of listening to music. For me, I'm used to kind of controlling my own playlist. With the randomness and just like, what's Greg gonna play next? I love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I love hearing, because I want to kind of keep people on their toes. And, you're going to hear the Fleetwood Mac that Rumors album, at times. But again, I want to play, Buckingham Nicks, where it really started. I'll throw that in the night and tell the history of how, Stevie was cleaning houses, and her and Lindsay, got lucky to get session time, at Sound City. And then that led to Mick Fleetwood saying, who are these kids? So I just, I love the history of it, and I'm incredibly fortunate to do what I do and have the freedom to do what I have to, I do on air. So
absolutely. So with that being said, you've worked, because of being in the music industry, you've also worked as a promoter. So you've got to not only play these people's music, you've got to meet them.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly, a different journey. But some of the greatest nights of my life, you've been on there in a couple of them, seeing music in a small room with these type of artists, or these rising artists that, they come in and say, oh man, I can't thank you enough, for getting us here. We wanted to let you know 3 months down the road, we're getting open for the Rolling Stones, or we're going to be on Letterman next week, or Conan, or Leno, and all that. So seeing all that, then I always, we tried to mix in the local regional flavors, to give those good folks a shot to play on those bills, because they deserve to. And it's been unique, man. as a small independent promoter in small towns, there's a little bit more hurdles that we have to climb, versus the corporate rooms and the some of the rooms that have different owner, have multiple owners, I should
Have
say,
management,
things like that,
owners.
management, all that, and it's it's been tough at times, but when the music starts and you got a packed room and everything is the way it should be, God, Greg, that's a euphoric feeling that I can't even describe what it's meant to me. And I've been lucky to look out on Main Street some of those nights, and every car parked in front of the venues or from close by will be like from a different state. Like that last show with King's X, I think we had 17 different states into town, and they would have never been to our little towns if it wasn't for music.
That's right.
And I've had people over the years, Greg, that have came to my shows that have met their wives or husbands, proposed to their significant others, named their kids after artists that have played there. And some people just come back to visit because they said, I had such a good experience here, I want to stay in the town for a couple days. So
I got to say, just from the shows that I've gone to, I've met friends from England, from Europe, across the pond, through the rock show and through the venues and out of state. So we had folks from California come to your show, met them, friends on Facebook. Everyone keeps up with each other, and it's a family thing. And I'll have to say, just as I'm going to pull a story out. So it's at the Apple Shop, and Rich Robinson was coming. And oh man, so he was late. He got lost. I mean, you got to imagine Whitesburg. Living in Kentucky, it's still hard to find certain places. I can't imagine them just popping off the road on a big tour bus. But he finally got there, and when they played, and I mean, we're in a room. I mean, I could have been rude and touched the strings on his guitar. I mean, I never in a lifetime would think, one of the founding members of Black Crowes is going to almost have a personal concert just for me.
Yeah, it's true. And that's the reaction I always told people. We had this motto, folks that bought tickets and came here, you enter as strangers, but you leave as friends. You and I can both attest to that because of that, meeting, and you come to the show, we've been friends for that long. But I always tell people, these shows are like the best living room concerts you'll ever see. So when you could reach out almost and touch these artists like that, and or over their careers, they've been playing the stadiums and arenas and stuff, that personal aspect and that, small room feel, you just can't capture that anywhere else. It's like one of the nights when Tyler Childers played there was a guy who walked up to me. He said to me, this feels like seeing, Bob Dylan in the Village in the early 60s. And there were people crying at that show. And now to see where he's escalated, and he's one of the great storytellers of the state's history now. And he's still in the infant stages of his career, I think, because
for sure,
this kid is amazing. But things like that has happened over the years, and it's, it's been a blessing. It sure has.
Well, I mean, you talk about the names. You had Paul Stanley of Kiss. You've had Jason Isbell, L.A. Guns, Michael Sweet, JD. You were talking about JD earlier. You had JD. You had Richie Kotzen and the Winery Dogs. I mean, that right there is a super group trio. Amazing.
Oh yeah. Unreal. You speak of Isbell there. The first full band show I had, Isbell, like Rich Robinson, had trouble getting here. So it was the Friday night in September of 2007 during the Mountain Heritage Festival in Whitesburg. So town was packed. And so we were holding people back, so he was running late, but he was going to get there. So the time he got loaded in and stuff, music didn't start till like 11:45 that night. So he played to after 2 a.m. So it was incredible, but he apologized and he put on one of the greatest shows I've ever seen, in a small room in my lifetime. So just like Rich that night, they were late getting here. They'd had trouble on their exit out of Nashville as well. But you were there, and that was an incredible show. The way it sounded, and where people right up in front, they're in the front row, were from California, Hawaii, Nevada, New York City, and they were mixed in with all of us. So it's a cool little melting pot, that you get to be part of. And
Yeah.
it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and the opportunity for the local bands, you always provide opportunity for them to play, and for them to say, I opened for so and so, and oh man, I mean the opportunity,
Yeah. Well, to me, Greg, it starts with their local artists, whether they're painting or whatever, they're local musicians. All of it starts there, and especially this state, there's so much talent in there, and you're part of that. I'm excited to see them on that stage as I am, say the national headliner rolling through. But it all, to me, it all starts local. It's always going to be that way. And if anybody says any different, then they're wrong. It's
right.
it's all about our local folks first, and it's cool to see them on that stage with those artists.
Would you say, and this is something, we had a conversation the other night off camera with a couple of the bandmates, and I was actually visited a guy who's going to be launching a venue here in London soon, and just talking through the logistics of, the bands are willing to play. The bands will negotiate and do what they just want to play, and no matter what town you go in, you're going to find the willingness from bands to play and the quality. I really feel like you can find them. It's the idea that, people show up, and, it's so different than when we grew up.
Yeah.
We didn't have the internet. We didn't have distractions, man. You had to go to the show. If you're going to hear the music, you gotta go to the show. You can't just, wait for someone to pop up live on something streaming and, I beat the crowd and listen to that. So we had to go. And I feel like there's a switch back towards that. I feel like you're seeing more of the younger generation saying, hey, forget the streaming stuff. I want real stuff. And I hope that's the case. But how do you turn the tide in the smaller towns? And I know it's difficult when, like we were talking about, owners of venues or management, so what's the speak, where they say, hey, it's not about the dollar, it's about the culture.
Yeah. Well, that, I can start in Whitesburg, and I kind of tell you how that went. The mayor at the time in Whitesburg, James Kraft, who's passed away, to me is the greatest small town mayor that I've ever heard of. And he pushed for live music, for them, to get the alcohol into town and the restaurants open. But it takes from the top, from your leadership in your town. Now, James Kraft's wife has got the same vision. Whitesburg's going to be fine the rest of their days because what he started and what she's going to keep on going with. But you got to have a community like, folks like you and your friends over there that will be willing to support, bands that roll through on a Friday night that you may not have heard of, but let's get out and support them so we can get to the next show. And that's what we did, Whitesburg. Our first show was with Mark Knight and Mark Chamelia. They were guitarists from this great band called Bang Tango out of the 80s. They were just killer guitar players, but they were great songwriters and singers, and they just sat down on a stool. We sold the show out, no alcohol now, Greg. And so we knew we had something, and that's kind of when I went to Jason Isbell's people, and we got him in a month later, sold out, no alcohol. So the vision there was, well, we've got a sense of community here. We've got a leader that supports it. We got folks that support it, and they're going to show up to see music. Now, as the years have went on, the cell phones, the social media and stuff is escalated, but there's still folks out there, and you've got to somehow, some way, collectively with the venue owner, your mayors, your council people, everybody's got to push to get that gathering, back in there. And I think that's the main thing. You've got to have a community that will support it and will take a chance on a band that's rolling through. And and that's the thing, because, when you get three or four bands and if you've got no crowd, then your promoter is going to be, incredibly anxious to take another chance, a month and 2 months down the road. Early on, we were, thank the good Lord above, we didn't, because all those early shows had the attendance.
Mhm.
So I could take a chance on another band and this and that. And it just kind of built. And that's kind of the way it has to happen. It's got to be within a community, and you got to have people that are going to show up to just like me and you did in the early days going to record stores. Well, we couldn't stream it, but that album looked cool. So I want to take it home and listen to it. And then I fell in love with them, and, and that's kind of the way it has to happen. It has to start from, the grassroots side of it. The community has to support it. That's the whole key.
And that's why I like that. You're seeing you want good people like the Crafts over in Whitesburg. Good friends with his daughter over here. They've been friends for years and great people. You want those kind of people encouraging the culture to grow and encouraging those kind of things. And that's why it's just so important to have musicians that are part of that. I mean, one thing to go hide in the basement, learn all your scales, but maybe get out and talk to people who are making decisions and be an encourager, not a discourager. So
that's good. Yeah.
It's tough being a musician, and then it's also tough being a promoter. So, any way we can find a happy place to be entertained with music.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing it is, Greg, and you've been on that side of the stage where you're playing, you're looking out and people are sitting there and they're locked into what you're playing, and there's nothing better for a community. To me, I think music is so vital for that. I don't know, I can't explain it, but it's just the harmony that it brings and the joy. And the people get out and they're working through the week, and it's like, there's going to be a great show here, whether it's Summit City or Apple Shop or wherever. They're just, their whole energy and their outlook for the week, it gives them something really to look forward to. And it's just, music is such a healer, and it inspires you. And but I just think it makes, for just a better environment. It doesn't matter if it's Whitesburg, London, Hazard, or wherever. I just think that music is so important. Live music in small little rooms across this country. God bless them. Those are the heartbeats. To me.
Well, the next time you're over here in the Corbin Way, you've got to check out. We met at the Wrigley one night. Right across the street is a new album store. It's called the White Rabbit.
Wow.
And the record store and also a venue. So just this past weekend, they packed in, I don't know how many kids. I saw the pictures. I didn't get to go. I had stuff going on, but insane. It just like that. It reminded me of that old scene, the just pop-up concerts and anywhere you could get kids crammed in there and plug into anything and turn it up and just play. So that was so encouraging to see pictures on that. Band, I think it played Even. It was the Eventides. They've been around for a couple of years here in town, and they just had an album release party right in the store. So
well, I love that. And over the years, especially reading in music history, how bands would show up at these record stores and have just this incredible concert, and then at 10 o'clock that night they play at a local venue, and all those folks from that record store were there to buy records, to listen to bands, but then later on in the evening, see them on that stage. That's a cool little link right there to beauty, in a town. So congratulations to those guys, and that's, I wish we had more of that in every small town in Kentucky. I really do. That's right there. That's inspiring, that they're doing it. And I'm going to have to get over there and see that myself.
Yeah, if you get a chance, pop in there. Those guys down there are super nice, and they've got the most eclectic mix and they got new and old albums in there, and it's great.
Yeah.
And everybody, the good news is that they've done a great job word of mouth marketing. everyone knows about him around here. So it's a good thing.
Mhm. I love it.
All right. So we talked a little bit about the folks you've interviewed. And when we talk
Yeah.
about, big names, who was one person while you're sitting there talking about you're geeking out, but you're actually like, this person is so much realer or nicer or cooler or so much more than what I thought.
Well, the guy that I'm always going to go to is I got to interview Alice Cooper before they played with the Stones at Churchill Downs,
Oh, well.
and he is everything that I had heard about leading up to him. He had just signed to release a record on New West Records back in the early 2000s, and that's how I got him. And so we talked for 25 minutes, and he was the most kind, cool, interesting guy that you could ever imagine. And obviously, he was one of my heroes. And for him to turn out like that was like giving me a bar of gold. And but he was, to me, he was, and I've been lucky, Greg. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of great players over the years, and I really have. Sometimes I look and I was like, gosh, I can't believe we got him on or whatever. But Alice is always going to be that guy that was I couldn't have scripted it any better, and how he treated me on the interview. And the last question I asked him, that night, I said, well, you're an avid golfer. And I said, well, if you could walk on to the golf course with, Lee Trevino, Tiger Woods, and I named another golfer. I said, or you could walk into the Grundy Ballroom in Detroit with Hendricks, Bonham, John Entwistle. I said, what would you do? He said, I'd be going to the Grundy Ballroom because those guys were my friends. So, and then he did me this great radio ID, and he was, I had a chance to interview him again, and I turned it down because I don't think I could ever duplicate that moment, what it meant for me personally, and the way it came across the air. So I was very lucky that day to get to do that. And it's like, there's been certain artists that I've seen over the years that I've only seen them one time, because it's like no way the day can be any more perfect than what it was leading up to the show and the show. So I've been lucky, man, with these artists over the years. I sure have.
I believe that. And it's amazing with Alice Cooper, how smart he is in the business. I don't know if have you watched the movie Hired Gun?
I've watched it. And I watched it during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I caught up. I couldn't tell you how many documentaries I've watched over the years, but you're right. And Alice, everything that he said, and and that just was so spot on.
If anything, in that whole movie, that 5-minute segment where he's talking about, I don't care that you can play that note run, that 50-note run frontwards, backwards, with your eyes closed and behind your back, and with the whole stage on fire. What I care about is you show up when you say you're going to be there, do your job, be happy about it. And if I can ride on a tour bus with you for 6 months and not throw you out on the road, then I'm going to hire you.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, you're like, man, that's just rock etiquette, and he seems so,
It's like Damon Johnson, who played for him and who's played for us many times over the years. Damon had an incredible band called Brother King. They've had a resurgence again, but Damon's, when he worked with Alice, Damon did exactly like that. It led on to him getting a gig with Thin Lizzy, and Damon's a huge Thin Lizzy fan. And he even asked Alice, would he let him go play with Thin Lizzy? And Alice was like, I know how much this band means to you. Yes. And then Damon's worked with Steven Tyler. He's played with Jeff Beck at I think it was iHeartRadio deal in Vegas. And now Damon's playing Gary Rossington's part and Leonard Skinner. So that whole thing that Alice Cooper says, Damon's the guy that did that. And because Damon works hard, he is so talented, but he's out of that Alice Cooper mold right there, and that's what's got him so many jobs, over the years. And plus, he's one of the greatest guitarists ever to play. Absolutely. He really is.
Yeah, and so give us your call letters and radio dial for your shows and when we can catch you. And then there's the FM app too that we can catch.
It's 97.9 WZQQ from like Hazard. You can pick us up on the FM dial, really to the banks of London to Campton, even over to Southwest Virginia. You can listen to us via TuneIn Radio on your phones, or you can go to WSGS.com and click the icon WZQQ and listen to us that way as well. And we have our social media. We just do Facebook and Instagram. So we try to stay real involved with that. And we listen to folks that, that message in. And if they've got a suggestion, then we take heed. It's their radio station. We're just push and play. But on Sunday night, I guess in ways, it's mine to take a chance. And I just hope good souls like you and other people that will listen, because I believe in it that much. It's an honest effort, and and I just try to convey my love of rock and roll music and rhythm and blues, soul, Americana, folk, funk, everything. I try to intertwine it and mix it up, man, and serve you guys, on that show. And it's you talk about therapy and stuff like that. I mean, you put headphones on and you're in a dark studio at 11 o'clock at night, and you're listening to The Song Remains the Same on vinyl, and knowing it's going out to somebody's car. Man, that's a lottery ticket for me right there.
Well, I'm gonna put the links in the comment sections for this post, but there's also a Facebook group where it's the Rock Show on there, and guys are
the Rock Show with Greg.
Yeah, all through your whole show, people are commenting and taking pictures from all over the world. It's really cool.
And it's a family and a community, and the cool thing about Greg, some of those folks even on the West Coast that I've got a chance to sit down at the Rainbow in Hollywood with them, or in Redondo Beach at a watering hole or whatever, or go to a kind of a little get together, that a few of them through for the community that listen in there that were on the West Coast. And gosh, I can't even tell you, what that meant to me. And then I still stay in contact with those folks. And just like with you, I met you via Wade, how many years ago, and here we are tonight, still, friends, and allowing me to come onto your show, man. That's the way, music connects.
Yes, it really does. Well, Greg, I appreciate your time. Definitely appreciate your conversations, and look forward to more shows and listen to more rock. And then, man, keep us in mind anytime you hear new music. Let us know about it.
Well, I will do that. And like I said, I'm appreciative of the friendship, and like I say, you make a friend through music. It's a different relationship, and I'm proud to call you a friend, and I'm honored to be on this podcast. I sure am.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Greg.